So on worth, I think I'm at equal worth most of the time. On safety, I think I oscillate a lot between closed, protects, and contains.
Okay.
The perfectionism stream didn't really resonate with me. I wouldn't really know where to plot myself in that. And then the needs thing, I think I'm aware of needs and wants.
Okay. So let's go to the perfection piece. So the concepts make sense though, right? Like thinking like
Yeah.
I'm defective or can't do something or not able to act. And then
Yeah.
okay, but you didn't put yourself in it.
Concept made sense, but I didn't. None of the three areas really resonated with me to be like, oh, cool. Like it's very easy for me to, in the worth and safety place, to place where I am, but in the perfection part, nothing really jumped out at me straight away.
So basically what you're telling me is that the concepts make sense, but then look at the adult state, which is being realistic.
Yeah.
So kind of look at it from that vantage point, like how often or how much are you realistic about your abilities to do things, and basically the bar that you hold yourself against. So so like basically if you start thinking in that way, I can see you're cooking a little bit, you're having some thoughts about it. But
Yeah, I
basically
think,
like where do we set the bar? Is it something that is super high that I then have to jump over all the time? Yeah.
Yeah, I think saying all that stuff, I would probably be oscillating between maybe defective and perfect.
Yeah, which is actually pretty normal. I mean, like
Yeah.
that's like telling, this is just about being a human being. Like it's not going to be perfect. So I'm glad to hear you say that, because it's important that you understand that there's no way that you could just always be realistic. And the reality is most of us bounce back and forth between being defective and thinking that we're broken, and then we swing. Notice those are extremes, right? Defective and broken and then perfect. And so we swing to the other one, and that's how these ego states function. Is technically, MJ, we have this defective part, this child part, that's the nature of the child within us. They are defective, okay? And then this teen part shows up and is like, you're not defective, you're perfect. And so that's like his solution for what's going on with the child. And that's why people bounce back and forth. Sometimes you get a glimpse into you're triggered enough that you see that little child, that little boy part, and he's all defective. And then other times you get this glimpse of this teen part that's trying to be perfect. And that's like his answer. So technically what happens is the teen is trying to manage this child part of us, but they both take over and they kind of have a tug of war. But how did you know that you bounced between those? What was on your mind? What did you think of?
Yeah, now as you've given me a bit more of a definition, I don't think I go into the defective state very much. I can definitely see in my relationship in the past, if I was under a lot of stress and I felt like I was failing, I would go into that defective place where it's just like, I can't fix this problem. I can't solve this. Like, I'm just going to check out of the situation. But when I think about it more now, I can see that I'm attached to holding a very high bar for myself, because I'm fearful if I let go of the need to be perfect, that I'm going to be somehow impacting my performance.
For sure, that's also what the team tells you. But the reality is if you become realistic, your performance stops becoming the issue. And it's the expression of what you're trying to do. In other words, you're able to express yourself at the best possible place whenever we're realistic.
Yeah, I think you've just given me some language around a shift that I've been going through at the moment towards realizing actually the best way I can do anything is just to be myself, like uninhibited. And I think you've just...
well, wait a minute. Uninhibited implies no boundaries and being a little too exposed. So I'm with you on being yourself, but I want you to be cautious, of your language. Language is everything. And so understand that that's not within you is like, oh, this uninhibited, this limitlessness. That's all teen stuff. You do have limits. It's up to you to decide what they are and to work within those. And then you're quite successful in what you do. It's like you don't have like a rocket scientist trying to be a heart surgeon, right? Like typically you don't. That would be kind of crazy and stuff. But essentially, like you don't have that going on because there's limits built in. So if you don't set them for yourself, the world will set them for you. But it's exciting to see you start to make some connections there and change a little bit in your perspective around, oh, okay, so because see what you did is you recognized, basically I'm more in a perfect place. I try to be perfect in my business is what you were talking about before. And I'm sure that's very much active. And then, but what you also have a window into, which is really cool, is that it's also because I think I maybe am defective in some way. And so essentially the defective happens first and then the perfect shows up to protect that defective part. So started out by saying that you weren't in there. Turns out you are. And so what I want you to do is to make a little mark that says perfect is like your baseline, and then put a little dot next to defective because you were able to identify that as well. And so what you would do, and this is, we're not going to go through corrections right now, you don't have all the pieces to do that, but essentially we apply a little formula to ourselves, we talk to our team, and we dethrone him from that perfect place. What's interesting that happens though, MJ, is that whenever you do that, the defective shows up larger. So understand what I'm telling you is that you got to move this teen over, and then you're really going to feel defective. And you'll be like, what the fuck? I thought you were supposed to be helping me. But essentially you feel more defective, but then we apply the same method to the child. And then the issue is resolved. In other words, the block has been removed.
Yeah.
And that's you moving back into realistic, which is something that I would encourage you to consider learning how to do when it comes to your business.
Yeah. And so just to get the process down, if I was going to play around with this myself, the first step would be to deal with the perfectionist teen, retire and heal him. And then the next level down would be the defective will then show up because the perfectionist is basically just a shield that's trying to protect the defective part of me. And then I would do the same thing with that and then let that go. And then I would be in the realistic place.
Essentially, that's what occurs. But understand there's like a particular way to work with yourself, and there's some formative pieces that have to occur within you to be able to apply that method super well. But yeah, essentially, in a nutshell, that's kind of what you would be doing. And understand too, the goal is not like 100%. Like if you can move yourself into a more functional adult place, even 40% of the time, you're living a completely different life than you have before. It's totally different. I made it up, right? Like I invented this, and I probably operate at like maybe 55 or 60%, maybe. I mean, like, it's not possible to really, I mean, if someone can go harder than that, it'd be awesome. They could teach me a thing or two, and then I wouldn't do it all the time. Somebody else could do it. But basically, it's not about like, oh, I'm supposed to be this 100% of the time. And I'd hate for you to use this intro information as a way to like, for your teen to shame you about not being in an adult place around your business or your relationships. The idea is awareness. And as soon as you start assessing, like you've been doing, as soon as you assess where you are, your adult is active. That is one that's kind of assessing everything. Right? And so the goal is to soothe yourself, soothe those kids, and then move into this adult place, and then approach the situation that you're triggered by, whether that's doing something with women or whether it's something related to business or whatever it is that you're trying to accomplish or work on in your life. All right, very nice. MJ, was there any, let's see, worth, safety, perfection, and then needs as well? You went through those, the other three, right?
Yeah, I've been doing a lot of work around self-worth and safety at the moment, and I think, and with needs, I think.
What does that mean? What work have you been, when you said been doing a lot of work?
So I've had a lot of stuff come, I look at myself as there's the mental, emotional, spiritual, and physical components of me, and I think
Those
mentally,
yeah.
yeah, and so for a long time, I've been mentally and emotionally operating from the place of being enough, but realized I'd left my body and spirit behind. My spirit's now in a good place, and I'm just continually working on healing what's coming up in my body from a place of not being enough, and have made some really big gains or really big breakthroughs in that area recently.
And that's,
I feel like
it's exciting. I mean, the thing is like, understand that those 4 vantage points are one person. So those are actual entry points into who you are, or into the core of who you are. So when you're working on something in an emotional way, you're making a mental impact and shift, a spiritual impact and shift, and a physical impact and shift as well. So, you know, like what I've developed and what I tend to work on with people, of course, is more the mental emotional, but it is actually a spiritual process, and then they have physical changes. So it's just like I've really witnessed this, that if you can work at a core level, which is what this work is about, you don't have to deal with so many different sides. You know, this is a mental emotional window or lens, but it does have physical and spiritual components. And hopefully the piece that you just learned can go a little bit deeper for you into the work that you have been trying to do. You know, like if you play with this a little bit and kind of plot yourself out in there, and it can give you more of a language and a framework that I believe you were missing, and that maybe now you can try to implement into what you're already doing.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome. I appreciate the input and the feedback too. That's cool.